Yeah, so the first question is let's get into, like, how did you guys get into the industry? How did y'all appoint some of the characters that you guys do in iconic shows and movies?
Oh, okay. Girls first. I got into the industry because I didn't want to. And that is that I was singing at a friend's party, and he wasn't there because he had just passed away. So anyway, I was singing at his memorial and kind of doing a little stand-up, and someone came up to me. He was a big agent, and he had passed away, and his assistant came up to me and said, I know that Erin would want me to have helped you. So she gave me her card, and I said, oh my gosh, that's so nice. I'm finally going to be a backup singer for Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. I'm very excited about that. That's what I really wanted to be. I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, and then I looked down and it said animation and commercials, and I ripped it up. Because I'm not right. And then she hunted me down in the white pages, and I auditioned for Tiny Toon Adventures, and I got a call back, which I didn't want to go to, and then I went to it, and as I was leaving, they had wanted a 30-second story, so I did.
John Morris. I started acting when I was 6 years old. I took an acting workshop in San Francisco called Kids on Camera, and we did on-camera voiceover and modeling. And my favorite part was the voiceover. And so I got an agent from that. I started auditioning. I did some on-camera commercials like Chevron, Isuzu, etc. And then I got the audition for Andy.
Oh my God.
In Toy Story. And there were about 100 kids. It was an open call. Back then, in the early 90s, the staff of Pixar was like 30 people, and now it's like over 2,000. So it was early days, and they said, bring your favorite toy to the audition. I brought all my X-Men figures, and my mom was like, you have to pick one, and I was like, no, I'm bringing them all. They'll get it. And so I brought all my X-Men figures, I dumped them out, I started, launching into play and creating the voices just like Andy. And that's what they told me later, like, oh, that's how Andy plays. And so that got me the role. And also voiced Santa Boy the night before Christmas. I got to meet Tim Burton, which was awesome, see the little models, and Pepperoni and Lego Island, among other projects. Really quickly, my Tom Hanks story is I got to meet him at the premieres, but then at Toy Story 4, there was a bouncer security guy outside the bathroom, but I got to go in because I had a cast badge. And who's in there washing his hands but Tom Hanks? Woody. And I just caught eyes with him in the mirror. He's like, hi, John Morris, voice of Andy. Oh, right, hi. And we just chatted for a few minutes, just the two of us. And I just said, you're just brilliant as Woody. And he's like, thank you so much. I love Woody. And we just had a really nice moment. And then they were out of paper towels. And so he's like,
So you wiped your hands on his shirt.
So he goes, where are the paper towels? And I just said, I don't know, just like go like this in the sink. And so we're just standing there like this in the sink, talking to Tom Hanks. So, and everyone always asks me like, how's Tom Hanks? How's Tim Allen? And especially after spending time with Tom Hanks, he's like the nicest guy and so down to earth and like your best friend's dad. So. Yeah, that's my Tom Hanks.
I wonder if that story would take a different turn if it wasn't already done with its business.
Oh, right, yes, right. It was a multi-stall, but yes, I hear what you're saying.
He was washing his hands.
Yes, he was washing his hands, yes. And then I helped him with the...
All right.
Went on the Actors Studio. We were always, because that was part of the mystery. The studios didn't like you to go out and say who you were. And I remember driving, and I'd been doing voices since 1988, yep. In 1988, that was Tiny Toons. That was my first audition. I booked it, my first show. I'd been doing it, and then Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends came along. And I'd done Dexter, and I had done everything, but it was always all the advertising was inside Cartoon Network. It was inside Warner Brothers. You never really saw it because I was not a kid. So while I watched myself sometimes, although I didn't look or sound like Christy Brinkley, so it blew my mind every single time. I'm like, I can't watch me.
You look great.
Thank you. So I did, like I said, I was driving in downtown Los Angeles, and I was going to the dentist. And I passed passed a gigantic red billboard with this scrawny, bizarre-looking yellow character named Cheese, and all it said was, "I pooed it." Which was an ad lib that I did in a session, and it was on the largest billboard, and I laughed to myself because if my dad were alive, he'd be 108, but he was a vaudeville and a stand-up, and then he was a nightclub comic, and he worked with the USO, and he was gone in 1984, so he never saw any of this. And I remember looking up and go, "Dad, I sorta made it." Not really me, but an ad lib, because that's not actually my picture and I didn't draw it in anything, but that's when I realized how gigantic it was. And so I pulled up to the stoplight and I'm just like on my way and I'm looking, and then I see somebody with a camera taking a photo of the billboard. And that's when I realized cartoons are much bigger in my life and will be for a long time than I ever thought that they would be. And I don't know, and it's been a lot of fun, but that's what I realized that it was. I don't think if as a working actor, and tell me, John and Marty, because I've also been acting my whole life, like, it's never over. You never make it. You're never like, I have done it, because that's the biggest mistake that people make. You see these guys that are like, I'm buying my mansion, I'm rapping, I'm doing this, and I'm done. Yeah, your art is done. When you say that I'm just gonna do this for the money, it's over. You have to do it for the laughs, for your art.
My story with Andy, or sort of my first moment of realization was, I was so little when I started, I was 7, and I had literally just learned to read. So, I'm in the booth for my first session with John Lasseter, the director, and he's like helping me through the script because I'm 7, and he's like, it's Andy's birthday party, and so think about, when you had your last birthday party and how excited you were, and I was like, okay. And, it was very abstract for a while until they showed me storyboards and drawings of Andy and little models, and it's like, okay, this is gonna be the first feature-length animated film created with computers. Okay, and this is what it's gonna look like. And then I remember the premiere was really that surreal moment, especially because Andy is the first voice you hear. All right, everyone, this is a stick-up, don't anybody move. It's like, oh my gosh. And, it started, and I'm there with my family, and the camera pans down, and then we're just off to the races. And I remember that being very surreal. I have kind of goosebumps just thinking about it. And everyone in the theater kind of turned around, and I was like, that's me. I'm so little. I was 11 at that point, but still. And then starting to see it on, with the Disney connection, starting to see it with their marketing on buses and billboards and things. You were talking about billboards, yeah. And it's like, holy crow. And then similar to what you were saying too, for a long time, unless I said something, people would, because I don't, I'm not Elijah Wood, where yes. Where what, or Daniel Radcliffe, or it's like, there's Frodo, there's Harry Potter, so I could kind of fly under the radar. I still kind of can, and similar to what Marty was saying, like, these events for me are so exciting because I get to talk to you about, your Toy Story and the toys you grew up with and your favorite characters and your favorite movies, and you hear these statistics like 1 billion people saw the movies, but then it's like I get to have the one-on-one, which I love. So that's why I love to come to these events. But yeah, it was very, I would just say it started very small. It was me with John Lasseter and Andrew Stanton and Pete Docter and the audio engineer and the creative team, and we're just creating this in the booth, I'm recording individually. I met the cast at the premieres, it was very, in a way it's kind of solo work, until you meet the rest of the cast and it all kind of clicks and comes together. I feel so, I had a fan come up to me at my last event and say, oh my gosh, you're the first voice we hear in the first Pixar feature film. And it's like, that's an honor, and that's kind of surreal.
Wow, I'm getting goosebumps as well, John.
Oh.
I hope everyone else is getting goosebumps too. We're gonna open up.
And they said, can you pump it up a little, as Marty said,
Yeah.
can you pitch it up?
Yeah.
And I said, well, yeah, but basically Petunia Pig is me talking like this, because what Warner Brothers was doing was not making her a sidekick, as all the girls were. Everybody was a sidekick to Daffy and everybody else. June Foray held her own brilliantly, but it was written to be just a kind of a side thing. So all I did was me, and a lot of what I just want to tell you, if I could see these guys, Alex and Pete and the guys that did this, I would strangle them, because they didn't use the dialogue of me describing dexamethasone pig, keep her in the 1940s, but bring her into 2025. Or 2020 at that time, that they thought it was gonna come out. And so that was what it was, but I didn't, and I knew that there were other people that had done it, but because I think I'd done Granny, and Warner Brothers was pretty comfortable with me being kind of in that Looney Tunes pocket. I don't know what that says about me, but that was.
You know, my favorite toy is Woody, and I think Andy's favorite toy is Woody because he's his first favorite. He's like the first one on the bed, you know, the first one that has, and the first one where he decorates his whole room, you know, inspired by Woody, and yet we all know that feeling of growing up having a favorite toy or favorite toys, and then you get the new toy, and that's of course Buzz Lightyear, and so. I definitely had, and I remember in the booth talking with John Lasseter and everyone about, you know, they're like, well, what were your favorite toys growing up? And that's you know, what Woody is to Andy. They're basically best friends, you know? And so think about your toys and that connection. And I think a lot of people talk about how emotional Pixar movies are, and it's because that's happening in the booth. You know, that emotional connection is happening in the booth, facilitated by really strong directors and writers.
You got it. Yeah, you definitely you nailed that.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
even as
Thank you.
and you're right, as a young child, you probably needed a strong yet gentle voice director. And
Absolutely.
no matter what anybody says about Lasseter, there'll never be another John Lasseter.
Chainsaw Man!
Yeah, I like chocolate milk, yeah, I like potatoes. I'm in Idaho, and I have some Idaho potatoes. Yeah, the flea would like for you all to get out of here and shut up!
I love it. Now Woody, he's been my pal for as long as I can remember. He's brave like a cowboy should be, and kind and smart. Wow.
The thing, when the going gets tough, get going! Shame over pain, baby! Shame over pain!
Well, let's see. To me, You've Got a Friend in Me is really the heart of Toy Story. That's what I sign on my photos often. And so I think Andy, in a keynote, would talk about friendship and community and support, the support that friends give, and you know, how much he loved his toys. And,
Yeah.
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 That is so cool.
Yeah.
Well, give him a hand.